Hi, welcome to part one of Take a Load Off Your Knees. So, today we're going to explore how you can take a load off your knees by growing your awareness or learning about how your hip works. So, let me explain a little bit about why we're going to do movements at your hip when we're trying to take a load off the knee. So I have this little skeleton knee here, and you can see that the knee joint is made up of like two main parts. The thigh bone or the femur is the top of the knee joint, and then the tibia or your shin bone makes up the bottom of the knee joint. So your thigh bone and your shin meet at the knee joint. So the top of your knee joint is actually the bottom of your hip joint because your hip joint is where your femur, the top of your femur, sits in the socket of your pelvis. So we're going to explore how moving, learning about how your femur, your leg bone, moves in the socket of your pelvis at your hip joint can actually take a load off of your knee down here. All right. So we'll need a couple props for this practice. You'll need a block and you'll need a strap. And that is all. So we're going to start in standing. So come on over into standing, and we'll just take a moment to check in with your knees. So as you're standing here, how are your knees feeling? How much load do you feel moving through your knees? How much compression? Like how heavy do you feel on your knees right now? And then we'll also just add a little bit more work through the knees by just coming down into a really little squat and then come on back up. So you don't have to go very far, just a really little squat and come on back up. And check in with your knees as you do just 2 or 3 more of this squatting movement. Just checking in. Notice how your knees feel at this point. Yeah? All right. If you can come up with like a word that represents how your knees feel right now as you're doing these little mini squats, that would be really, really great. So let's move into our hip movements. So I'm just going to lower my screen down here a little bit. We'll start with a movement that will use both the block and the strap that you've collected. So you're going to bring the strap in a loop and bring it around your legs, up around your thighs. The block will be placed in between the thigh bones or the femurs and place it up really nice and high, right up close to your pelvis. And then your legs will hold the block gently there. And then you can cinch the strap in nice and tight so that the strap now is holding your legs against the block. Then you can lay back, let your legs feel the support and accept the support of the block and strap. Your legs don't need to do a whole lot of work to stay here. The block and the strap are holding them. Nice. And so we're starting with some very small movements that are generated from the hip joint. So I'd like you to bring the thigh bones closer together. You'll squeeze the block really gently and then let that go. Yeah, all you're doing is thinking about thigh bones moving closer together. So they're kind of tipping in towards each other, pivoting at the hip joint. and then let go. Squeeze the block and let go. Nice. Bring your fingertips to the fronts of your hips, just the fronts of like a crease where your leg bone meets your pelvis there. And then if you do a little lift of one knee and then a lift of the other knee, as you lift the knee, you'll feel a tendon kind of jumping out under your fingers. You're over one of your hip flexor tendons there. So we're going to come back to the same movement, squeezing the block. And I'd like you to squeeze the block in a way that your hip flexors don't jump to life this time. So if when you're squeezing the block, you feel those tendons pop under your fingers like they did when you lifted your knee, then back off a little bit. So I'd like you to find the kind of the building the force of the squeeze only to the point where your hip flexors under your fingers can stay nice and quiet. Good. And then doing a few repetitions in that kind of sweet spot where your hip flexors stay quiet. That might be some hip flexors are so excited to get involved in everything that they'll turn on if you're just even think about squeezing that block. So if that's the case for you, then that's fine. That's the amount of force that you work up to. Think about squeezing the block. If your hip flexors turn on, that's far enough. Nice. Really good. Easy squeeze the block, front of the hips stay nice and calm and relaxing. All right, let's switch it up. So now instead of the leg bones moving in towards one another, they're going to move away. So the leg bones are going to tip away from one another, pivoting at the hip joint. So you'll end up pressing your legs out into the strap and then relaxing. Press your legs out and then relax. Nice. Bring your fingertips back up to the fronts of your hips here. And same thing, as you press the legs wide, find the range or the amplitude or the amount of force that you can press wide with, where your hip flexors don't come to life. The tendons under your fingers stay nice and quiet. Nice. And then practicing a few repetitions of pressing the legs wide in this way, without the hip flexors on the front of your hips getting involved. Really nice. All right, let's move on to the second hip movement that we'll explore in today's practice. You can remove the block and strap from around you and set them off to the side. We won't need them anymore. So this next movement is called ankle to knee. So you're going to lift one leg, turn the thigh bone in the socket so that your shin and ankle kind of spin over, hovering over the opposite knee, and then place your ankle on your knee. Hence the name ankle to knee. So I'll go over that one more time. Lifting the leg up, spinning or rotating the femur, thigh bone in the socket of your pelvis so that your leg and ankle swing through space, and then you can land your ankle over the opposite knee. Once your ankle has landed, keep it there, and then you're just pivoting. The knee moves closer to you and then moves further away. So you're not pressing with your hand to press the knee further away. You're using the muscles around your hip that wrap around your leg bone, right up at the top of your femur, where it connects into your pelvis. And just an easy movement. You don't have to go really far. We're not trying to stretch anything or strengthen anything with this movement. What we're trying to do is help you feel the leg bone moving in the socket of the pelvis. Feel your hip. Grow your awareness of your hip joint. Really nice. All right, let's grow our awareness of the other hip joint. So you can uncross your legs, and then we'll bring the other leg up. So you'll lift your leg up, spin the thigh bone in the socket of the pelvis so that your heel comes around and can land on top of the opposite leg. Nice. Once the ankle has landed or the heel has landed, you'll spin, pivot this leg bone, the femur, in the socket of your pelvis so that your knee kind of moves through space. But your knee isn't doing the work to create this movement. The work is happening up here around your hip. And it's not hard work. Again, we're not trying to stretch or strengthen anything. Just move in the range that feels really easy. Move in the range that feels almost relaxing. Not almost relaxing, relaxing. In the range where you're not having to like hang on for dear life through your belly or your ribs. You're able to just breathe easy. Your jaw isn't clenching or holding. Just move easy. Nice. And let's uncross that leg. And you can make your way back up into standing. So we've just done two simple exercises to help grow your awareness of your hips. Let's check back in with your knees. So coming back into standing and just checking in with how how's the load on your knees now following those two simple exercises? You can come back in and do a couple of your easy squats and notice, how do your knees feel now? Were you able to take a load off your knees? I hope you enjoyed that practice. Keep your eyes on your inbox next week. We'll do a practice that looks at how growing our awareness of your ankle and foot can help also take a load off your knees.